What's up? What's up? Welcome back to week 5 of Max Marquee Matchup. Very excited for this episode. Got a clash of AFC foes in the Bills and Texans coming up. I got a new face of Win the Day TV joining me to preview this matchup. Obviously, coming off of what was an exciting week 4 Max Marquee matchup, talking about the Bucks with Spin. Of course, had a lot of fun doing that. But it's a new week, quarter of the season down. We're into October football. A little bit more of the chill is coming into the air. I'm excited to get into this matchup. So let me go ahead and introduce our guest today. Without further ado, we've got Ben from the Mafia Members Podcast. Happy to have you aboard, Ben. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely excited to talk about this game. Obviously, the Bills coming off what was it, their first loss of the season. Tough game on Sunday Night Football versus the Ravens. Texans doing a little bit of transition in what they're going through as well as they try and find their footing. But look, I got to say, Josh Allen certainly had an impressive start to the season. And, you know, I feel like we want to start here specifically as it pertains to the quarterbacks in this game, because they're two incredibly marquee, names as far as the league is concerned. Josh Allen and CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud coming off his impressive rookie year. Josh Allen putting up insane numbers for the entire, really the majority of his career to this point. But both of them kind of coming through a little bit of transition coming into this year from that standpoint. I thought it was an interesting jumping off point in that aspect. So the question that I'm going to ask you is obviously the big headline for you guys this offseason: trading away Stephon Diggs, moving into a more spread it out kind of ball, movement type of offense from that standpoint. Also being, recommitting to the run game from that aspect of what you saw your offensive coordinator bring in the second half of the season that was really successful for you guys. And specifically in the aspect of reopening a title window. Obviously, we know how last season ended in a tough loss in the divisional round as well. Bills have been in the playoffs on a multitude of occasions, had chances to take step, suffered those tough losses, and now are looking to kind of shift into a new window, for lack of a better term, from that aspect. So talk to me a little bit about specifically the new offense, how you're feeling about the changes now moving on from Stephon Diggs, and then also just in general about the team and trying to keep that title window open to compete for the Lombardi Trophy with Josh Allen.
Yeah, man, for sure. It's definitely, they started the whole season with the mantra of everybody eats, and you look at our the passing charts at the end of the game, and every receiver has like 2 catches, and that's kind of it, which is good in theory. And hopefully you have preseason. I was talking a lot about we don't have. The defense can't focus on Stephon Diggs, and if you stop Stephon Diggs, then you stop the Bills. So in a way, it's good. But when you run into a team like we saw on Sunday against Baltimore, if the whole offense it needs to be running smoothly, and if the defense forces you to kind of get out of a rhythm and you can't kind of do the plays that you're trying to set up for, the whole team is or the whole scheme is. So that in the first quarter, those plays will work better in the third and fourth quarter, kind of down the road. But if you can't get into that rhythm, well, then now you see why you need to have an alpha wide receiver in order to get you out of that hole. And you can just say, hey, Stephon Diggs is somewhere. Let's throw him the ball, and hopefully he comes down with the catch. So in a way, it's good, but you can see definitely the Ravens exposed us for not having an outlet, a go-to guy, a safety relief for Josh Allen. But I mean, as far as the window, when 17 is your quarterback, I feel like the window is always open. And he's just a guy who can make plays, and we even saw it that one time against Baltimore on Sunday when he scrambles right before he steps to the sideline, he's able to throw the ball 50 yards downfield to a wide open wide receiver, and that's only 3 or 4 quarterbacks can make that play in the league, right? So you're happy you have someone like that for sure. But one of the things I got a little bit of flack for in the offseason in talking about the Bills, and I said, even if I don't think this, like we still have expectations to win the division and win a playoff game, but even if we take a take a step back and look big picture, we can still have a successful season just by getting experience for Khalil Shakir being a wide receiver 1 and developing Keon Coleman into this wide receiver that we all hope that he can be. So even if it comes with a little bit of struggles, setting us up for the next 3-4 years, that's really where I think our Super Bowl window is, because in trading Stephon Diggs, we have $64 million in dead cap that we can't use. And that's probably why we're out of the running in the Devontae Adams sweepstakes, is because we can't afford to bring him in. We can't afford to do anything else. So even if we just take this year as a time to get everybody on the same page and figure out how this playbook is going to work, then it can still be successful if it leads us to better things down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, that I think that makes total sense, and it's a similar fashion in which the Chiefs are trading Tyreek Hill and not taking on a massive wide receiver contract within their books and switching the way that they play. And I think the way that you described it was being able to be a little bit more of a methodical offense, again, centered around what those plays can give you in the second halves of games in which you wear down the offense, specifically with the run game from that aspect, and being able to have those, work even better and be more effective. But if you're not in rhythm, if you're not staying ahead of the sticks, then things can get a little bit tight because you don't have that go-to guy to go.
Exactly. And
everything comes down to it.
And I think one difference for me and for a lot of Bills fans, actually, like a big difference is Andy Reid versus Sean McDermott. Like Andy Reid can draw up a play to get any amount of yards on any given play. He has something and that's kind of what we've been struggling to find, is a play caller that can even when all the chips are down, you can still go out and convert a 3rd and 12 kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, the reality situation is, for me, I agree with your standpoint of whenever you do have 17, though, you can be considered a contender, because that is an alien, in my opinion. I've said it about him. I've said it about the guy that you guys faced on Sunday Night Football, and Lamar Jackson. Those are aliens that operate at a different level as far as the game is concerned, because of the dual threat ability that they bring to the table. And like you said, they can make plays that only you can count on one hand the quarterbacks in the league that can make it, like that sideline throw, to say the least. But I think it's certainly fascinating from the standpoint of that quarterback cycle and the advantages that it gives you, for you guys specifically, building the team around Josh Allen, getting Stephon Diggs, but also the defensive pieces that you guys were able to add, obviously paying Trey White at the time, and then also Poyer and Hyde, and seeing their development playing extremely well at the safety position, eventually, through their decline and them getting a little bit up there as far as expensiveness is concerned, having to move on from them and replacing those pieces as well. And so all of those things go throughout the cycle and trying to build a team, and that also goes into the coaching aspect of it. But it is a reason why I believed in you guys coming into the year to certainly compete for the division and win it, was because Sean McDermott has shown that he can get a good defensive performance, even missing pieces, guys, and now lineups. And you still have Josh Allen in that run game to fall back on, and a pretty good offensive line. I think it's pretty underrated from that standpoint too. Yeah. I think our offensive line is underrated for sure. But just on the contract portion, because like they had to restructure all of Allen's money this year. And they kind of reworked his whole contract. We've seen it done with Patrick Mahomes, and I think there's kind of a little bit of a shift where it used to be, okay, let's go get the best wide receiver and the best running back, and we hope that while our quarterback is on his rookie deal, we can make something happen. But I think with what we're seeing with the quarterback contracts kind of across the league is, okay, we found our guy, we're going to pay him whatever it takes to keep him. And we'll supplement, we'll filter through running backs. Like, running backs are a dime a dozen. We'll go through that. Hopefully we can get a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson wide receiver on a rookie deal, and but we need to keep that centerpiece of the quarterback paid and on our team. And I think we're kind of seeing a little bit of a shift in that, in how the offense is set up. Yeah, and I think that it applies really league-wide, and I think it's a good place to transition into is, you pay that quarterback because they can cover up some of those things. There are still things that you need to build out as far as that's concerned. So you talk about obviously cycling through running backs, but having that offensive line to both keep the quarterback in a place where he can operate successfully, but also be able to run the ball on a consistent basis. We're seeing this year where the teams that cannot run the ball effectively and those that cannot stop the run are struggling on a consistent basis. And that comes down to trenches. Maintaining a strong defensive line, maintaining a strong offensive line are things that you can't necessarily skimp out on, and you have to be really good at drafting at. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind compared to other teams. There are ways in which you can massage kind of the ancillary pieces the further away that you get from the ball, especially when you have that centerpiece at quarterback. But in transitioning, that goes into what we're talking about as far as the Texans, because they're still operating in the luxurious world of a rookie quarterback contract where they have CJ Stroud on a cheap deal. And after what he showed his rookie year, that's a guy you could believe in, that you can make a deep playoff run. Heck, they obviously went to the divisional round last year from that standpoint too. But they're running into some issues of trying to supplement that. Obviously, they were the trade partner that went in and got Stephon Diggs. They felt really good about their wide receiver core. Offensive line they felt good about, not necessarily showing up to the same standard that they wanted to early on in the season as well. And they went out and got a guy like Danielle Hunter because they can afford to put those, assets into veterans from that aspect and pay them money because of what they have as far as the advantage of the rookie quarterback contract. And now they're in a space where they're trying to compete for a title, and that comes with real expectations. And especially they're feeling it. It feels like a little bit early on in the season.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually pretty funny, like even like right down to the player Stephon Diggs, like while your quarterback is in his rookie deal, going out and supplementing around him. And they even went out and made essentially the same deal that the Bills we gave up a little bit more because of the contract and all that kind of stuff. But right down to the same player got traded in order to supplement around what seems to be a generational talent. I hate using the term generational. I feel like it's overused, but what seems to be a very promising, quarterback, and just needs a little bit of help around him to really succeed. And they went out and did almost the exact same thing as the Bills.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the thing that comes to it. The more things change, the more that they stay the same. And sometimes those things go in cycles. But I think that this is an interesting one, specifically from talking about the cycle of the NFL to this point in the season. I spoke a little bit about being able to run the ball, being able to stop the run, the re-emphasis on the trenches, in my personal opinion. And I think that there's a little bit of a stark contrast for that specifically in this game. But transitioning into this specific matchup, obviously of the Bills versus the Texans, going to be in Houston. Texans are a 1.5 point favorite. The thing that I want to start out and just ask you for, just in this matchup, what is the thing that you feel like you guys need to do better coming off of that Ravens loss? And is there a specific matchup that you guys are watching for as far as your offense going up against that Houston Texans defense?
Well, the thing that was glaringly obvious against the Ravens was, like you've mentioned a couple times, that battle in the trenches, and we got dominated in that matchup. The Ravens were able to get pressure on Josh Allen. They were able to stop any kind of run that James Cook was going to get. So that's what I'm looking for the most, is to kind of see how the offensive line bounces back. And, we're supposed to be a really good unit. This is Deion Dawkins aside, because he's injured for this weekend, but we're supposed to be, this is the second year that all the guys are together, and we're supposed to be operating as a unit, and we got bullied on Sunday night. So I'm looking for them to bounce back and provide Allen a little bit of time in the pocket at least, and clear some lanes for James Cook. So that center and guards, how they work together and how they can create lanes and stuff like that. That's kind of what I'm going to be watching for. And then I think something that I think the Bills are going to do a lot this game is being 12 personnel, and they need to get a game out of Kincaid and Knox at the same time, and really try and attack the linebackers of the Texans. So that's kind of the two areas where I'd be keeping my eye on.
Okay. Yeah, look, that makes total sense. And I'm interested from the standpoint that you kind of laid out of offensive line did not necessarily have the game that you guys were certainly expecting in that aspect. And I was a little bit surprised to say that again, because I do think highly of your offensive line. I thought you guys could go kind of toe to toe with the Ravens, but their physicality was certainly impressive during that game. And obviously now going into this and not necessarily having Deion Dawkins is going to be a big question mark. And also from that aspect, I mean, you guys are had Khalil Shakir wheeled out as well. He's was one of my favorite guys coming out of that draft as far as underrated wide receiver. And I think he's played very well for you guys in the time. Obviously caught the touchdown versus my Chiefs in last year's playoff, which was an excellent catch. It was actually the first touchdown L'Jarius Sneed had allowed in the entire season, crazy enough. And it was a spectacular play by him, but he's somebody that I think has been kind of underrated and been able to be a nice piece for you guys, certainly as you guys transition out of trading Stephon Diggs. And so that's a Texans defense that maybe isn't as good specifically defending the run, but certainly better versus the pass. And that means that there's going to be a transition standpoint. So it's going to be imperative for you guys to be able to run the ball effectively in that aspect. And look, it is a question mark as far as the Texans defense is concerned. Can they stop the run on a consistent basis? And that's something that I dug in a little bit more, as far as the film work is concerned this week. So anything else before we go ahead and transition to the other side of the ball that you want to mention?
No, like we mentioned, or like you were saying there, I think one thing that's I think Shakir is underrated as a player overall, but the wide receiver core after the trade of Stephon Diggs, everyone was concerned about who's getting the ball and what we're going to do. But I think one thing that's overlooked about our offense is in getting rid of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, for that matter, we improved in catch rate and yards after the catch. So all of our guys, like Khalil Shakir last year, led the league in not dropping passes in catch rate. So I think it's important for us to steal a page from the Kansas City Chiefs and, have Allen only throw a 4-yard pass to a wide open Curtis Samuel, who can then run the ball for 15 yards instead of having Allen try and throw for 30 yards. So I think that's an important kind of idea or philosophy that we kind of have to get into and kind of realize that potential for all of our pass catchers.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's evolution, or I should say there's value in that evolution of being a little bit more methodical and being able to throw the ball a little bit shorter, both in being able to stay ahead of the sticks. And that's a place where your offense has thrived. You guys are 5th in early down EPA per play. Texans are about middle pack in that metric on defense from that standpoint. And if you're able to consistently, throw the ball, and whether it's run the ball as well, stay ahead of the sticks, and then also use that explosiveness out of the catch, like you said, with guys like Curtis Samuel. Obviously not Khalil Shakir in this game, but a guy like Dalton Kincaid that you mentioned specifically, he's one of the more athletic tight ends in the league, and he can do a lot with the ball in his hands. And specifically, as you mentioned, getting into heavy personnel sets early downs, I think that's a place in which the Texans are vulnerable. You guys have the players necessary to implement that, and I'll be interested to see if their base defense can effectively stop it, because we know if you come out of nickel, the Bills most likely are going to have a field day running all over you, to say the least, from that aspect.
yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of the matchup as far as the Bills offense versus the Texans defense. We can go ahead and flip sides and talk about CJ Stroud matching up against Sean McDermott and this Buffalo Bills defense. To this point in the season, you guys have pretty stark differences, not necessarily as great versus the rush as far as that's concerned. Have been a really good pass defense from that standpoint. The thing that, I'm kind of watching specifically here is, again, talking about early down ability. The Texans have struggled mightily to this point, specifically because they can't run the ball, and it's shown up on tape a lot, unfortunately. But the most important thing is them continuing to stay ahead of the sticks in this game, because if they don't, then the Bills pass defense really can shine from that standpoint. So I will turn it over to you. What specifically are you watching when your defense is on the field trying to slow down CJ Stroud?
So I think the first thing that every Bills fan is going to mention about our defense is injuries, obviously without Milano. And then we had Terrell Bernard out as well. He's supposed to be back. We're supposed to be getting Teron Johnson back. So if those players are back, those are who you're watching to, mainly to see just if they're over their injury or not, and see how well they can play. But I think in this particular matchup against Houston, we're going to be obviously the suspension of Von Miller that changes our pass rush a little bit, and it's going to be and Ed Oliver being injured and out for the game. So it's going to be a lot of Greg Rousseau coming off the end, and hopefully he can go back to that week 1 form where he had 3 sacks against Arizona. And hopefully we can apply some pressure, because I don't, without Mixon in the lineup, I don't know how good the Texans run game is going to be. So I feel like a lot of our guys can just kind of pin their ears back and go expecting them to pass the ball a lot. And I think our corners, Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, have been, well, Benford in particular is playing at like an all-pro level this year. I think PFF even had him as like on their all-pro team a quarter of the way through the season. So kind of forcing CJ Stroud to throw the ball into, and that plays into our strength of what we have available to us on defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that part of the matchup that didn't go you guys' way versus the Ravens was the spine of that defense, obviously with Milano being out already, but then going down Bernard and Taron Johnson going into it. That's not a good recipe to go against the Ravens, in which they can attack the spine of your defense on a consistent basis. But having them back versus the Texans, and again, with them being out Joe Mixon, if you guys can continue to put them in negative game script and be able to have Taron Johnson, who's a very good player, even without Ed Oliver, hopefully you can get, a guy like Dwayne Carter, not Dwayne Carter. Yeah,
Dwayne Carter.
Yeah. The rookie out of, I believe Duke, who, I think I saw some flashes from it, specifically even versus the Ravens, but from that aspect, you're going to ask those types of guys to step up and be able to give you something extra as well. Guys like AJ Espinoza, who we've seen, good play from in the past as well. Rousseau, as you obviously mentioned, that becomes even more important with that Von Miller suspension as well. So if you guys can put them into poor situations, get after CJ Stroud, he's going to be able to make a few plays, and he's done that throughout the season. But to keep up with your offense, can he make enough plays will be the question.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think the most important thing for our defense this week is to not allow an 88-yard touchdown run on the opening play. And then that kind of puts you on your heels for the rest of the game, because you know that run's coming. And you saw throughout the whole game, the whole defense biting on every single fake that went to Henry, because we were so worried about that happening again, that Lamar was kind of able to do whatever he wanted to do because everybody was in over pursuit. And if we can just kind of maintain our gaps, maintain our lanes, and, maintain our focus, then I think it's a different game.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, look, it's tough sliding sometimes when you're facing Derrick Henry, and certainly when you give up 88 yards to start off the season or start off the game, it'll put you, on guard for the rest of it.
Yeah. It messes up your offense, because now your offense is trying to play catch up. It messes up the whole rhythm of everything. And then next thing you know, you're calling a trick play for no reason.
You're not kidding. Look, and Sean McDermott's good for one of those, weird ones every few weeks, man. It comes out of nowhere when you at least expect it from that standpoint. But yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing. And again, when you're living in the world where you're going to be more methodical on offense and want to operate that way, limit your turnovers, but also maybe take away some of the explosive plays that Josh Allen doesn't create on his own. But that means that, get in a situation where in your negative game script and you feel pressed maybe to make a few of those plays, then there's a conflict of interest between those two things. So certainly getting off to a good start will be key for you guys in this game to try and push the Texans being even more one-dimensional and help out your defense that is missing a few pieces to this point from that standpoint. But yeah, so that's the matchup on both sides of the ball. I think it's a good time to kind of mention our best bets as well. I'll let you go ahead on first as the guest. We have had some success here in the past, fortunately, so no pressure. But we have something that you'll be looking for as far as this Bills and Texans game is concerned.
Okay, so I picked 2 of them. I think the best bet is to take the over-under was set at 47.5. So I said take the over on that one. I think it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. And so I think it's pretty safe to say that it'll be over or it'll at least be 48 points scored in that game. And then with Terrell Bernard maybe coming back and, maybe not at 100%. And then we have Dorian Williams, the other linebacker. I said it's pretty safe to say that Dalton Schultz is going to get over the 2.5 catches. I think another one, I think it was like 57 yards for James Cook, rushing yards. Preseason, I said obviously Josh Allen is our MVP, but if we're going to have any kind of success, James Cook needs to be our team MVP, our team offensive player of the year. And going against Houston, I see us using him a lot. So I would also take a bet on him going over on the 57, I think 58 rushing yards. I think that's a pretty safe bet as well.
Yeah. Look, I think that's a safe bet from that standpoint as well. And look, I was going right along that mindset because my two best bets in this personal game was going to start with James Cook. Again, I think there's a clear mismatch with you guys is on the ground specifically versus their ability to stop the run on the defensive side of the ball. You can get James Cook for 70 plus yards at plus 150. I think that's great value. Go ahead and add that to a parlay or just bet it straight. Make yourself a little bit of money off of that as well. And along the side that I do think that there's going to be points put up. And because there's no Joe Mixon, kind of a mismatch as far as their run game in general is concerned. I think you guys are going to be putting points on the board. There's going to be more pressure on CJ Stroud to make plays. Over on CJ Stroud's 260.5 right now over there on FanDuel is a minus 113. So that'll be the two plays that I'll be looking at. James Cook rushing yards, CJ Stroud's passing yards. I think there will be points put up. So I do like that pick of the over on your side as well. So with the best bets out of the way, let's go ahead and pick this game and go ahead and give us an X factor as well. Lead us off.
Okay, so maybe because I'm biased, but I picked the Bills to win. I think well, first of all, I picked them to lose the last two games. I picked them to lose against Jacksonville because they always play us well. So I'm sick and tired of picking the Bills to lose. So now I'm going to pick them to win. So I said they're going to win 34-27. I think, like we said, it's going to be a high scoring game, a touchdown every, touchdown a quarter, a field goal here and there. So 34-27. And I think the X factor this week from the Bills perspective, at least, is going to be Curtis Samuel. We brought him in 3-year deal, $3 million a year, I think is what his contract is. And we've gotten that essentially works out to $1 million a catch that we're paying him so far. So I'm hoping that this week he can get at least, 5-6 catches, maybe get that 70, 80 yards kind of thing, maybe a touchdown from him. So he's my X factor, and kind of with Shakir out, Keon Coleman still kind of developing. Obviously the focus is going to go to James Cook and Kincaid. And so hopefully that Curtis Samuel can kind of find some space and kind of, be the player that we were all hoping that he was when he was coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. And so from my, kind of aspect, I do think that this is a spot in which you guys are going to get the win. I am picking you guys to go on the road and get it done in Houston. I'm kind of leaning a little bit more, maybe 31-27-ish. I think it is where I maybe landed. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be high scoring. And for me, the X factor, and it's a good thing I picked a Texans player. For me, the X factor is Nico Collins. And obviously Nico Collins is a big name at this point. But it is important for me to kind of talk about guys that I loved. And obviously with the Stephon Diggs trade coming over, people are like, who's going to be wide receiver one? Is it going to be Diggs? Is it going to be Nico? What you saw last year and the connection that him and CJ Stroud had made me have a lot of confidence in what he was going to be able to do moving forward, even with Diggs in town. And that's only carried over. I mean, he's had spectacular games throughout this season from this standpoint. And in my opinion, this is one of the games in which he's going to have to dominate. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball all that effectively on you guys. Obviously, we know Stephon Diggs is, Stephon Diggs, and he'll be able to help out from that aspect. Tank Dell in and out of the lineup, probably an issue for them from that standpoint. They got Dalton Schultz, but that's going to put a lot on Nico Collins as, the number one wide receiver to be a dominant number one wide receiver. I'm sure you guys are going to give him the requisite attention that he demands. But if the Houston Texans are going to be able to pull out this game, CJ Stroud is going to have a good game first and foremost. But specifically, Nico Collins, in my opinion, is the one outside wide receiver that can really possibly attack your defense and give you guys fits throughout the entirety of the game.
Yeah, 100%. And if we want to call it a revenge game, our defense is going to be doing everything to make sure that it's not Stephon Diggs who beats us. So they will leave Nico wide open if it means that Stephon Diggs is not going to make a catch. So yeah, I definitely agree on that one.
Hey, absolutely. I can't blame you one bit. And I do like the pick of Curtis Samuel, to your point. No Khalil Shakir. Got to get the ball in these guys' hands quickly, because we know that D'Amico Ryans likes to have an aggressive mindset as far as the defense is concerned. That's where you can kind of beat them after the catch from that aspect. So let's see if Samuel can show up here and have a little bit of a breakout game as a free agent coming over in the offseason from that aspect. But all that being said, Ben, I want to thank you for coming through onto Week 5 edition of Mac's Marquee Matchup to talk about the Bills versus the Texans. Again, you can find Ben over on Mafia Members Podcast. My apologies.
Yeah, it's a Mafia Members Pod on social media. If you like, I'm doing a giveaway right now. So as soon as I hit the 100 subscribers on YouTube, I'm like 30 away. I'm giving away some Mafia Members stuff. So go and subscribe to the show on YouTube and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Make sure you guys go ahead and check it out. And once again, thank you so much, Ben. Again, right here, stay here. We're going to be on Win the Day TV Sunday mornings, again, talking about each of the big time games on the slate. Best bet with me, spin, prop, and of course, Sosa as well. And of course, I'll be going live on Sunday quarterbacks. Make sure you guys follow over there on X. And of course, follow yourself, or myself, I should say, DMac Wake 316 on X, as I continue to cover the Chiefs and of course the entirety of the NFL. Appreciate you guys for coming by once again to Week 5 edition of Mac's Marquee Matchup. Thank you to Ben. With nothing else to say, enjoy a weekend of football, man. Peace out.